In Europe and North America, behind the closed doors of capitals and military headquarters, an intense debate is unfolding. Who will be the next chief of NATO, the military alliance responsible for the defense of 1 billion people? The post of NATO Secretary-General is usually a bump-free ride. I mean, there's very little executive power, but it's a public role, so usually NATO chiefs enjoy a easy-breezy tenure. But that is unlikely to happen this time. Currently, the NATO is at a crossroads. Russia is at war at its borders, and the alliance needs a strong leader, one that is capable of tackling the dual challenge. 1. Keeping allies together in supporting Ukraine, and 2. Guarding against any escalation that would draw NATO directly into a war with Russia. Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has done a good job so far. But the Norwegian is expected to step down in September, so a replacement could be named as early as July, especially ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania. Currently, there are many names being put forward, but there is no obvious frontrunner. One of the names being discussed is METTE FREDERIKSEN, the Prime Minister of Denmark. She says she hasn't officially applied for the job, but remains one of the top contenders. At 45, Frederiksen is the country's youngest Prime Minister. But an election would mean she would have to step down as Prime Minister, something that could cause political turmoil at home. Another problem could be her country's military spending. Currently, Denmark spends less than 2% of its GDP on military, something that NATO has as its guideline. Another frontrunner is KALLAS, the Prime Minister of Estonia. She's the first woman to be elected as PM in Estonia, so she could even become the first female NATO Secretary-General. But some members remain apprehensive about her. They believe she's too hawkish on Russia. Another candidate is Ben Wallace, UK's Secretary of Defence. Wallace has put his own name forward for the challenge. He's highly respected across the alliance, a member of Parliament, and even a former military officer. But some EU countries, especially France, would be apprehensive. They would want a NATO leader with the EU. Many countries would also prefer a candidate that used to be a president or prime minister. Stoltenberg himself is the former leader of Norway. There are a few other names also, but many believe it'll not be acceptable for members like Hungary and Turkey. These nations are often at odds with others over key issues, including the appointment of new members.
And my sense, given the role of NATO today, the importance of NATO today, the Allies will be looking for somebody who is a serving Prime Minister, because a Prime Minister really has the contacts, the address book, the ability to make immediate phone calls to presidents and prime ministers, both in the NATO countries and beyond, which are geared to the kind of high-level diplomacy that NATO is now carrying out.
So the race of the next NATO chief is heating up. But for now, there's no clear frontrunner. If no leader is selected soon, Stoltenberg may be asked to stay on. Because what the alliance wants is to put up a united front in the face of war.
Email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.